Welcome to this week's episode of Biz Success in 15, where top experts share hot tips and strategies that you can implement in as little as 15 minutes to build your dream business. And now here's your host, the Visibility Wiz, Cindy J.
Hi, I'm Cindy J, the Visibility Wiz, and welcome to this episode of Biz Success in 15, where top experts share hot tips and strategies. Today our guest is Andrea Owen. She is an author, mentor, and certified life coach who helps high-achieving women let go of perfectionism, control, and isolation, and choose courage and confidence instead. She has helped thousands of women manage their inner critic to create loving connections and live their most kick-ass life. She is the proud author of 52 Ways to Live a Kick-Ass Life, BS-Free Wisdom to Ignite Your Inner Badass and Live the Life You Deserve. Her second book, How to Stop Feeling Like Shit, 14 Habits That Are Holding You Back from Happiness, is due out on January 2nd of 2018. When she's not juggling her full coaching practice or hosting retreats, Andrea is busy competing in triathlons, chasing her 10-year-old son and 8-year-old daughter, or making out with her husband, Jason. She is also a retired roller derby player, having skated under the name Veronica Vane. Welcome, Andrea. It's great to have you.
Oh, thank you, Cindy. I will never get tired of hearing that bio.
And the making out with Jason part, right?
It is. I came up with that line in the very beginning of my business, and it just has stuck. And I love hearing it. It's true. It's very true. But
yes.
Yeah, thank you.
It's great if you have a loving, healthy relationship that you can connect to like that. And I know
Absolutely.
That's so much of what you help women achieve, which is great.
Yeah.
To begin, would you please describe a personal or business challenge that you had to overcome in order to achieve your level of success?
Well, gosh, I wish we had more time because I would give you both a personal and a business. But I think I'll go with the business because I know that that's the majority of your audience. I think that this might sound so elementary, Cindy, but honestly, when I was in life coaching school, which I'm sure you have a lot of coaches that listen to your show, I really set my butt in training and just thought that when I was graduated and had my certifications, that clients would just fall into my lap. And I have a science degree. I don't have a degree in marketing or business or any of that. And so I did not know how to run a business. And back then I didn't even know that I needed to know how to. So that was a challenge when sort of, the cold water got thrown in my face of, yeah, you need to know how to run a business and how to run a company. And that was a rude awakening. And it was a challenge, learning, having even just the knowledge of knowing that I had to walk into that I'm like, oh, I thought this was going to be easy. This is my creative expression and it's my passion project. And I think that if you really want that, then that's a hobby. And that's not what I wanted. And so it was having to learn the business basics and having an online business. I feel like it's still in its infancy of being an industry. And it's been quite a ride.
Right.
So it was a challenge of definitely of mindset of, can I do this? Getting through the compare and despair because the internet has made that so easy for us to fall into that trap. And then really just the nuts and bolts of learning how to run an online business.
So whenever you say compare and despair, I take it you're speaking about the imposter syndrome. Whenever people's thinking, oh, I'm not as good as Andrea, so I can never succeed. I'm not as good as, Frank Kern, so how can I ever make it? Right?
Yes. And I want to distinguish the two. So compare and despair, I think, is something that we all do. I can't stand the personal development advice that says just stop comparing yourselves to others, because I think as humans, it's what we do. We're biologically wired to size up other people, are you good? Are you bad? Are you better than me? It's just what we do. And so what I encourage people to do is to notice when you're doing it so that you can choose other behaviors. I just feel like, and that's what I talk about in the book. This isn't about here are all the 14 ways you're doing life wrong and you need to be doing it differently. It's here are all the things that are making you feel terrible. You probably don't even realize that you're doing them so much because it's become just such a strong habit. And here's how to notice it quickly so that you can get out in front of it. And the imposter syndrome is more of the feeling, and I know probably a lot of people listening can relate to this, of feeling like that kind of wash of feeling, when is everybody going to figure out I don't know what I'm doing? And I don't belong here. That's more of what the imposter syndrome looks like and sounds like.
Mm-hmm. And I know I love habits. Something that I've taught forever is your entire life is nothing but a habit. And, it's all these billions of habits that we have that's creating our life, that creates our destiny, that created our past. And whenever you start changing some of these basic habits, miracles start to happen.
Yes.
Also, I know that you talk about the inner critic a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So can you explain your definition of the inner critic, how it wreaks havoc with a woman's life, and how we can manage it?
Oh my gosh, I gotta pull up my sleeves for this one. Okay. So there was 3 parts. The first question was what it looks like. Is that what you asked?
Your definition.
Okay.
And how it wreaks havoc and how we can manage it.
Okay. So my definition of it is it's the voice that tells you you're not enough. It's also the voice of comparison, what we just talked about. It can also be the voice of the imposter syndrome. It can be the voice that, for many of us who do have a level of success, we've gotten past the voice that says, you shouldn't do that. What if it fails? What are they going to think? We've bypassed that. But for many of us, once we do that, we hear the voice of, ooh, who do you think you are to do that? Are you sure you should be doing that? So it kind of can manifest in all different ways. For some people, it just is a feeling rather than an articulation or a dialogue that they hear. And so how it wreaks havoc is that it keeps us stuck. It keeps us from making decisions that will create happiness and success in our lives. It also keeps us, for many, it's the instigator of self-sabotage. It helps us to make decisions that aren't in alignment with who we are and our real values. And I already forgot the last part of your question.
How we manage it.
How we manage it. Okay. I love that this is like 15-minute conversations because I can talk about this for 15 hours.
Right.
The one tool that I love to tell people, if I just have a little bit of time to talk about this and how to manage it, is to get really intimate with your inner critic, to know what your triggers are. Because if you aren't able to recognize it so quickly, can you imagine, like, if we walked through life, I just thought of this right now, if we walked through life and all the bad guys, like if you didn't know they were bad guys, like, and how quickly we would be taken advantage of and robbed and all of these horrible things. But if you know very quickly, and they all had labels on them, then your life would be a lot more safe. So it's the same thing with this, and that might be a terrible analogy, but
I really connected with that simply because, I've had my own past, and a lot of my audience knows that I was sexually abused by my father growing up. But my dad was the kindest, nicest person. Everybody flocked to him. It's not like people like that have these labels that say, hey, beware, anything like that. I personally believe we all have so much good in us and so much bad. And whenever we start looking for the good in other people, it also helps us find the good in us and accept us who we are, because we all have the good and the bad.
Yes, I do agree with that. And in terms of the inner critic, what I would tell people is, once you learn to recognize what your triggers are and what that voice sounds like quickly, you can learn to manage it and choose. Again, it's not about I can't stand the good vibes only and, always think positive thoughts. Like, no one does that. Like, we're human. Lives are messy. So it's about knowing quickly what's happening so that you can choose a different path.
I know with happiness, a lot of people think that happiness is someplace you achieve. And I know you and I both know it's a decision that we make to be happy. But I think one of the statistics with happiness is how much quicker happy people bounce back from all of these challenges, from even your own inner critic. Because if you're not generally a happy person, your inner critic can cause you to fall into depression and do things that you would normally do and make you not even know who you are. But whenever you're a generally happy person, then you're going to bounce back. So whenever happiness is your focus, it helps with the inner critic as well as everything else. You would agree?
Mm-hmm. I do. I do tend to disagree a little bit that happiness is straight up and down, black and white, a choice. I think that that's one of the reasons I wrote this book, was because I feel like anybody can just decide I'm going to be happy. But if you're still engaging in all of these behaviors, if you're still constantly striving for perfect or people pleasing or self-sabotage or imposter syndrome or all of the behaviors, it's going to feel like shit. That's why I titled the book that. So it's about knowing what's going on in your life so that you can take responsibility for your actions and choose different tools. In my experience and my clients, that's when happiness is like, that's how I live my life in alignment with who I want to be.
And I completely agree with you. Happiness is intrinsic. So anytime we're thinking we have to change, we're not living our own lives. And you can't be happy. You can't be happy because you're constantly doing what you think everybody else wants you to do. You're trying to fit in with the norm. And who creates the norm? You know, that's a whole nother discussion that could be like 10 hours. Right? Yeah. But also, can you describe 2 or 3 of the most common habits that hold women back from happiness?
Yes, we just talked about one, the inner critic, and I start the book with that because it is sort of the foundation of all of it. And the way that you speak to yourself is paramount in the way that you feel and the way that you treat other people. So that is the most common one. Some other common ones are chronic control. A lot of my audience, and I'm sure yours too, you probably have an audience of ambitious, high-achieving people. Control can tend to be a big problem. These are people who really dislike uncertainty, and to live is to be uncertain. You know, we don't know how things are going to go really ever. We don't have many guarantees in life. And a lot of my audience struggles with that one. And one that I love to talk about that I don't feel like gets talked about a whole lot in personal development is the whole concept of being strong. And I think, you know, my audience is primarily women. I love the men folk out there, but my audience is primarily women. And we have like a visceral feeling about grief and struggle and things like that. And we're constantly telling ourselves and telling other people to quote unquote, stay strong. And I personally want to turn the definition of strong on its head. You know, staying strong sometimes is asking for help, is for falling apart and feeling things like grief and fear and these things that are just human emotions.
Being strong is accepting yourself and all of those triggers and knowing yourself so that you can pick yourself up and continue.
Amen to that, Cindy. Yes.
Amen to that.
Yes.
And I know that you speak about shame in your book as well. And shame's really a buzzword these days. And I know that you're even ecstatic that it's coming out into the personal development. So can you share your view about shame and what it has to do with the 14 habits that you share?
Yeah, I mean, even 10 years ago, shame wasn't something that was talked about a whole lot. And if you're familiar with the work of Dr. Brene Brown in your audience, she's a researcher who has studied shame extensively, and I'm certified in her work. And what's really interesting is that a lot of people have said to me, oh, I listened to your podcast and I like Brene's work, but I don't really walk around feeling ashamed, and I don't really resonate with that very much. And I'm like, that's a great conversation because not a whole lot of people do. And what's happening though is I can guarantee if you are engaging in any of those behaviors, the perfectionism, the control, the people pleasing, you are running from shame. You are trying to engineer your life so that you can avoid judgment, criticism, other people's opinions, feeling left out, doing the wrong thing. It's fear, basically. And also,
you read my mind.
One more quick thing is that the inner critic is shame manifested. All of your biggest fears and worries and anxieties comes up and bubbles up through the voice in your head. So that's how shame has to do with all of this. And it is still a really big word. It might be a buzzword, but it is still, people are like, I don't know if I want to talk about that, but it's so helpful.
The inner, going back to the inner critic and the voices in our head, we all have those voices, and oftentimes they're not ours, they're somebody else's.
Right.
But one of the huge shifts in my own life was when a coach told me that I was so used to being abused, because I was abused by my father till I was 18, got married in a mentally abusive marriage and stayed in that for 20 years. So it did, my life actually did begin at 40, because before then I didn't know who I was. But she said, you are so used to being abused, and since there's nobody in your life to abuse you, you're abusing yourself. And that's where I think so much of the inner critic comes in. Again, it's your habits. Because nobody else was telling me this, but they continued to tell me these things in my head, which was actually me doing it.
Yeah, I mean, the neural pathways get created. We know that about our brains, and that our brains are, these kind of, what do they say, like malleable, or you can change the neural pathways in your brain to think different thoughts. And that's really common. I talk about that in the book too, that because people always want to know, like, where did this voice came from? Why do I have this? And they're feeling despair. And a lot of times it is from your family of origin and or past relationships, like it was in your experience. And for many of us, it can come from our culture too. As women, we are, our economic status banks on us not feeling good enough about ourselves. And that happens a lot. And that's where our inner critic can come into as well.
Yeah, I'm so into the study in the history of women, and people think that we have came so far, and in a lot of areas we have, but our minds haven't totally made that shift. And that's why I love your book. Yeah, that's why I love your book, because it definitely helped with that shifting in the mindset, where women can be strong and confident and capable, and not feel that everything has to be perfect, and that they are in control of everything. I used to do when I was a divorce coach, I did a blog radio show with a gentleman co-host, and it was like a he said, she said version.
Okay.
And one time he said, the woman is the one that holds, the woman is the glue that holds the marriage together. And I thought, how old-fashioned is that?
Wow, that's
that
interesting.
somebody who's still, because I jumped on him. I sort of felt sorry for him. I go, we do not want to be the glue. We want to be equal partners, right?
That is not my responsibility. Yeah,
exactly. And so I was shocked. He changed his mind, but it's interesting. And again, it's the culture. Whenever you talk about the culture and I know, he's Hispanic, and a lot of the Hispanic culture is still very male dominated. And, and a lot of cultures and families still believe that way, religions. So it's great that you share all this. So can you share a business strategy that our listeners can implement in as little as 15 minutes or less?
Yeah, I've thought about that question, and here's a question that I get asked a lot, actually, from even my clients who are just interested in what I do day in and day out. And they ask me, how do you get so much done? And first and foremost, I have a great team. I have an online business manager that's been with me for 5 years. So she knows my business sometimes better than I do. And I also have a VA and someone that produces my podcast. So kudos to them. But the second thing that I've learned sort of the hard way is being non-negotiable about time management. So, and some people are surprised when I say this, but there is not a day that goes by where I sit my butt down and I don't know what I'm going to do that day. Never. Because I break down tasks, and I can talk mindset too, but this is straight strategy. Right. But we use Basecamp, which there's a lot of different softwares out there where you can manage all of your tasks. And then I break those down further and then work backwards. It was the same with writing the book. People ask me, how did you write so much? My dad died during the time when I was writing the book, and I had to rearrange everything. I say, okay, I need to write 60,000 words and I need to turn it in by this date. How many words can I feasibly write every week? Okay. And then just break it down into chunks and have goals every single week. And it is in my calendar. I know exactly what I'm doing. So I'm never, and sometimes there are days where I get sick or whatever, and things get moved around, and I might have to work a weekend or get up at 4:30 in the morning to do something. And that's just the way it is. But it brings me such anxiety to not know, right. to have a whole day where I know I have these tasks and I'm like, what do I do? So just that brings me so much relief. And full transparency, I struggle with the chapter of control. So that I know sometimes is my own numbing, is to plan, but I'm fully aware of it. And that has helped me in business so much.
And boy, it's true. It's whenever you have a plan and you know what you're going to be doing that day. It's so much easier to stick with it and not to get caught up watching YouTube videos or podcasts
I did that last week.
Or, playing on social media all day. And there are times we need to do that, but, to step away from our business. But whenever you know what you're going to be doing each day, it clears your mind.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, it does. And I have a mindset one if you want me to share that one, and I can do it quickly. So it's definitely upper limit stuff. So for those people that aren't familiar with that, the term comes from Gay Hendricks. He wrote a really great book called The Big Leap. And it's his theory is that we all have this set point in our life, whether it's financial or in relationships and in our business, where we can only handle a certain amount of success. And I had heard about it before I read the book, but I completely believe it. When my first book came out, it kind of catapulted me into the spotlight, and it scared the crap out of me. I didn't know how to handle it. I was so uncomfortable. And I hid out for about 4 months afterwards and really had to go back and start doing the work. This time I knew it was coming, and it was kind of like, like in some kind of like Spartan fight. I was like, I'm ready. Because I don't remember who said it, but new level, new devil. Every time you up level your business or your personal life, the inner critics come back out, even if you have already done the work. So It's about knowing that they're coming, not necessarily befriending them, but knowing that they're coming so that you can use the tools that you have.
Right. And that's the whole thing, is that you can never control or get rid of the inner critic. They're going to be there forever.
Thank you, Cindy. Yes.
But you can manage it. And just by constantly even assuring yourself and loving it. I say, you can love it just like you love that, that crazy aunt that always, is right all the time.
Sure.
Doesn't mean that you have to agree with it, but whenever you love it and you accept it as is, then you're free to really succeed.
I agree. I do not think it's helpful for people to have fierce throwdowns and curse at their inner critics. I don't think it's helpful.
Right. And I know that you have a fantastic gift for our listeners. So can you share what that is?
Yeah, I am hosting a free group book study, and I'm really excited because so many times we have bought self-help books to either never read them with great intentions, or read half of them, or read them and not digest any of the information. And I didn't want that to happen to people, so I'm walking everybody through and guiding in an online space, a 4-week group book study. I'm very excited. You can ask me questions. I'll be doing Facebook Lives, and there'll be a lot of people in there, all with the same common goal.
Mm-hmm. And this is about your book, right? It's a book study with your book.
This one.
Yes, your How to Stop Feeling Like Shit book.
Thank you for bringing that up. I just assumed everybody knows.
Yeah, I knew, but sometimes we get carried away and forget to mention the most important part.
That thing that I've been thinking about nonstop for the last year, yes.
It's letting go of that perfectionism.
Right.
And all things mentioned on today's show can be found on bizsuccessin15.com. And you'll also be able to re-listen to today's show and catch up on previous episodes. So you'll want to hop on over there and download the free gift from Andrea. So be sure to do that. And also I'd like to ask you if you have any parting words for our listeners, Andrea.
I think just keep doing the work and be as kind to yourself as possible. I think sometimes personal development can be so overwhelming. And then I hear people say, I have so many issues, I don't even know where to start. And I just invite you to take it one day at a time. We all have issues, and we're all doing the best that we can. So be compassionate with yourself.
I love that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. It's my pleasure, truly my pleasure, having you on the show. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed today's show, feel free to share it with your friends. Be sure to visit bizsuccessin15.com and download the book study to How to Stop Feeling Like Shit with Andrea Owen. And I do want to say, big hugs, and be sure to tune in next week for another great episode of Biz Success in 15. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Biz Success in 15. For all links mentioned in today's show, and to watch or listen to previous episodes, visit bizsuccessin15.com. Thanks so much for listening, and be sure to tune in next week for another amazing guest.